When I was 16 or 17 years old, I was driving through the countryside one day, approaching the intersection of Hooper's Road. I always looked out for the sign at the end of Hooper's Road because I thought it was pretty cool that I had a road with my name on it. And when I looked on this occasion, there was no sign there. So I threw out the anchors and screeched to a halt and had a look around and found the sign lying in the grass on the side of the road at the foot of the post that it should have been attached to. It had fallen off its post. So here's this sign that says Hooper's Road, no exit. I thought that would be a pretty cool thing to souvenir. So I chucked it in the back of my car and drove off with a big grin on my face. Having done that, I couldn't then think of a clever thing to do with it. So I just left it in my car for weeks and weeks, possibly for a couple of months, until somebody spotted it in the back of my car and thought it was their responsibility to report me to the police. As you do. So one day, a policeman comes around to my house to discuss vandalism. I said, no, there's no vandalism involved. All I did was pick it up off the side of the road and put it in my car. He seemed very disappointed. He seemed very keen to charge me with vandalism. But as it turned out, having a road sign that I knew wasn't my property was a crime. So he said he was going to charge me with having a road sign that I shouldn't have. He was a very young policeman. I have a suspicion he was straight out of the police academy. This might have been the first big case he'd been on. I might have been the first person he'd had the opportunity to charge, and he was taking that opportunity. So I said, okay, do what you got to do, that's fine, I'm cool with that. I gave him the road sign, he went away. I worked at a bank at the time. People who work in banks are supposed to be of good character. They're supposed to demonstrate honesty and integrity and trustworthiness, and having a criminal conviction doesn't fit with that. So the next day I went to my boss. I said, this cop's going to charge me with this stuff. I'm going to plead guilty. How does that affect my job? My boss said, you won't have a job. We can't have someone working in the bank who's got a criminal conviction. And then he lectured me about what an idiot I was and how I shouldn't be doing stupid things. But then he said, the chief inspector has got a $1,000 overdraft. I'll see what I can do. And that was the end of the conversation. Later in the day, the young policeman phones me sounding very, very annoyed. And he said, it seems that your boss knows my boss, and I've been told to drop the charge against you. And then he lectured me about being an idiot and about not doing stupid things. So that was pretty cool. It was all over pretty soon after it had begun. It fizzled out into nothing. I wasn't charged with anything. I wasn't convicted of anything. I never gave it another thought. Nobody ever mentioned it again. It was no big deal. Except that over the years I've realised that actually it could have been a big deal. If I had been charged, if I had been convicted, it could have affected the whole of the rest of my life. Over the years I've seen many people whose lives have been seriously affected by very, very minor, stupid things like that. I was thinking at the time, the worst that can happen is I lose my job. What I hadn't thought was actually it would be very difficult for me to get another job. For the rest of my life it would be difficult to change jobs, having a criminal conviction. And the real biggie, it would have been very difficult to travel overseas. There are lots of places you just can't go to if you've got a criminal conviction on your record. If you haven't got any criminal convictions, keep it that way. In particular, before you go and do something really stupid, even if you think it's a bit of fun, think about the consequences of it. If it's serious enough, it could get you into serious trouble, and it could affect you for the rest of your life. I probably didn't tell him at the time, but I'm very grateful to my boss for for extracting me from what could have been a very bad situation. You might have noticed already that this story has a little bit of a murky side to it. It would seem that I have benefited from a little bit of police corruption. Now, I would like to hope that the conversation my boss had with the Chief Inspector was basically two guys who were a bit older and wiser and more experienced than I was, discussing the serious consequences of something that was really a very, very, very trivial incident, and deciding it would be best to drop the whole thing and just lecture me about being an idiot and being stupid. However, I keep thinking of the words my boss said to me, which were, "The Chief Inspector has a $1,000 overdraft. I'll see what I can do." I think that what actually happened was my boss used a little bit of leverage, and the Chief Inspector decided that it might be useful to him if the whole thing went away, minor as it was. Let me just take you back to what I said before about the sort of people who work in banks need to be of good character. It's about integrity and honesty and trustworthiness. Although I was very grateful to my boss for getting me out of that situation, I lost a little bit of respect for him. He didn't seem quite as above board anymore. And I certainly lost respect for the police. The Chief Inspector seemed a little bit dodgy. Maybe thinking the police is dodgy is another good reason to not get involved with the police. Keep your nose clean, stay away from them. Ultimately, I may be the one who's gained from a little bit of police corruption. I don't know, because I wasn't involved in the conversation that those two gentlemen had. All I know is it worked in my favour. And boy, I'm pleased it did.